What is going on, everybody? Welcome to the Total Takedown presented by PubSportsRadio.com. That's right, on this show, episode number 1 with Pub Sports Radio, we are breaking down the totals for UFC on ABC2. UFC Vegas 23, we're talking 1.5 rounds, 2.5 rounds. How long do we think these fights are going to last? Are they going under? Are they going over? It's the same show, it's just at a different place and we gotta change the name, so it's the Total Takedown. Here we go. Do me a favor, smash that like button. This is my first show that I've done for PubSportsRadio.com, so help me blow this thing up. I'm asking you. Once again, I am Bernie Sanders asking you for your support. Hit that like button, hit the share button, retweet. Thank you very much, and I appreciate all the love and support from each and every one of you. Let's dive straight on in to the show. We've got the first fight of the night, Empa taking on Sasha Platnikov. This is going to be bright and early. Most of us won't even have pants on. I'm going to have a waffle and a mimosa sitting ready to go for this absolute war. And I talked about this one a little bit on my podcast. I think this is a really solid spot to look for some violence. Now, we've got to see exactly what Empa's going to look like on the scales. He's coming down a weight class for the first time. You never know how that's going to work for people, but at 185, Empa was a decision machine. He hit people with some big shots, but he never quite was able to get anybody down with those. If he moves down a weight class, that power should translate. He should have some more pop on his punches. And we know Sasha Platnikov blocks punches with his face. This guy is there to be hit. And if he's not taking on a monster like Koski, who's got 1 round of gas in him, if he's taking on somebody more technical, more measured in their approach, I think we see a late finish. I'm looking for round 2, maybe the beginning of round 3. But I expect that Empa's going to be able to pick this guy apart, find his shots, and when he lands, he's going to land hard. Now, Sasha, on the flip side of this thing, he's a bit of a wild man. Like I said, he blocks punches with his face, and he comes after his opponent. So I don't see him shying away from Empa. I don't think he's going to make this a technical match where we're going to get, a full 15-minute spectacular where the judges aren't sure who won. That's just not how this guy fights. And with Empa coming down a weight class, with Empa making a quick turnaround coming off of a knockout loss in his last fight, I think this sets up beautifully for both sides to assist us in looking at an under bet here. The total set at 2.5. Over 2.5 is minus 230. The under 2.5 is plus 190. Depending on your book, it looks like you can get anywhere from plus 175 to plus 190 on this under 2.5, and I like it. That's a spot that I've been taking a look at myself. I actually ended up taking a half unit flyer on Empa by knockout at 5-1 because I do think that's the side that the finish is going to come from. But if you'd rather play it safe and have both fighters included in that, that might be the best way to go. That might be the better part of valor, the safer bet for you to take the plus 180 and just don't care who finishes it or how it happens. As long as someone gets killed, you're happy. Next up, we've got the first card of the preliminary card. That was the early prelims. Single fight on the early prelims. A little bit of a weird choice. But the preliminary card starts off with Unjung taking on William Knight. And here we've got a total set at 1.5 rounds. Over 1.5, minus 155. The under 1.5 is plus 135. Now we know Unjung, big, tall, long, strong, hits hard. That's what this guy does. And if you're looking for an under, you're looking for Unjung to cash that ticket for you. William Knight, dude's got power. He's got nasty ground and pound. But more often than not, he's a grinder. He likes to use his wrestling. He likes to push people up against the fence, drag them to the floor, make it nasty, make it ugly, and then maybe get something a little bit later on when his opponent slows down. Jung has shown himself to be really durable. I've already got a bet myself on William Knight. I like him from the side perspective, but we're not talking sides on this show. We're talking totals. So I think this fight is going to go over. I like this over here at minus 155. I think even if Jung comes out and gets off, I think if he is the better fighter, I don't think he's putting William Knight away early. William Knight's been knocked out 1 time. That's his lone loss on his record, and the guy he fought was a monster. We have seen Unjung beat some people, but one of the chinniest fighters in the UFC in Mike Rodriguez, and then he submitted a completely completely gassed out Kadisa Bragimov, a guy who's no longer with the organization after he unloaded trying to finish Jung in the first round. I don't see William Knight making that mistake. I think he uses the body lock. I think he pushes him up against the fence. Lots of clinch work. And then I think this thing hits the ground eventually. And once it does, William Knight is not the kind of guy that's going to go for broke and leave himself gassed out and exhausted. I think he controls himself a little bit better than that. So I don't know that the finish actually manifests here. I wouldn't be shocked if this one goes the full 15. I like the over 1.5. Featherweight fight, Luis Saldana taking on Jordan, the native psycho Griffin, and this one is another really fun match. Jordan Griffin, a guy that's kind of floating in the mid-ranges of the UFC, slick finisher. When he gets on top of you on the ground, you are in trouble. His submission game is his go-to move. And then you've got Luis Saldana, who's a striker, likes to play the outside, heavy kicking game. Brand new to the UFC. Really got to prove himself here. Coming off the Contender Series, I'm not sold on this kid. I don't know that Luis Saldana is the real deal. I don't know that he belongs in the UFC. Jordan Griffin is a guy that's barely hanging on to a UFC roster spot. So because of that, I like to bet on violence. This is another spot where I'd be looking at the under. The 2.5 here has the over at -190, the under at +165, and I can absolutely see this one cashing that under ticket because if Jordan Griffin isn't able to hang, in his last couple fights, his opponents have been more interested in just surviving, getting to the final bell. Luis Saldana seems like more of a killer be killed kind of guy. He's probably going to come harder. He's probably going to look more for that finish. He's going to put those kicks to work. But on the flip side of that, more often than not, I think those kicks get caught. I think Jordan Griffin catches a kick, takes this thing to the floor, and when he gets it there, I'm not confident that Luis Saldana has anything for him. I think Jordan Griffin by submission is extremely live. Very much like the first fight of the night, I've got to play on Jordan Griffin half unit by submission at 5-1. Now, again, this could be a spot where you take the safe route. Take the under 2.5, you don't care who wins or how they win, and you're getting +165 on it. I think it's a good spot. Next up, we've got bantamweight Hunter Azure taking on Jack Shore, and I am on record on my podcast telling you exactly how this fight is going to go down in my opinion. Total here set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is -170. The under 2.5 is +150. And it's a spot where I'm tempted to bet on the violence, but I think this fight is ending in round 3. Now let's talk about the totals for a second. 2.5 rounds. Check the rules of your book because for some people, over 2.5 rounds means the fight goes to decision. Most US-based books actually use the 2-minute and 30-second mark. So over 2.5 rounds would be the 2-minute and 31-second mark of the third round. You're buying that extra 2.5 minutes. You're chopping that off to say, I think it's going to go under that, and you get a little bit better of a price tag than the fight going to decision or not going to decision. So in this case, I'm expecting this fight to end in round 3. I don't know if it's going to happen at the very beginning of the round or late in the round, but I do think that Jack Shore is going to find his way to Hunter Azure's back after draining that gas tank and then putting him away late or making it to the judges' scorecard. So the only way I could look here would be over, but I'm not touching it because that's the read I have on the fight. Hunter Azure is a phenomenal wrestler. He's explosive. He's got heavy hands, but we've never seen Jack Shore have any kind of problems. He's 13-0, undefeated. So can he take the power punches of Hunter Azure? I kind of expect so. And then if he can, what happens next? Well, Hunter Azure is a guy that relies on his wrestling, and he's usually the bigger, stronger guy. Jack Shore is a guy that relies on his gas tank, and he's just relentless. So when Hunter Azure finally starts to slow down from the wrestling, from the striking, from the aggression, then Jack Shore takes over. Jack Shore starts to grind on Hunter Azure, and when Hunter Azure slows down, you can't handle the BJJ of Jack Shore. I expect Jack Shore to get into a dominant position late in the second or the third round, potentially finish the fight, or if he's exhausted from all the grappling ahead of time, maybe he just grinds it out, looks for that UFC win number 3. So I would be looking over in this spot, but because I think it ends specifically in round 3, I'm a little too scared to actually bet it. Heavyweight fight, Yorgan de Castro taking on Georges Danjo. A fight that has me extremely confused, and I don't want to spend a lot of time on because we have no clue what these guys are going to do. Total here set at 1.5. It's a pick'em. Over and under is -110. Either way, pick your side. And really, if you're siding with the favorite, Yorgan de Castro, you think he knocks this guy's clock and cleans him out in the first round. That's the under 1.5. If you're thinking Georges Danjo, you think he probably makes this thing gritty up against the cage and drags Yorgan de Castro late like we've seen happen before. That's the over 1.5. We don't know what kind of shape Danjo's coming in. We don't know what kind of angles and wrinkles he's added to his game since we last saw him. It's been 4 years since the guy's been in the UFC octagon. So this could be a very easy get-right Yorgan de Castro spot, or it could be a rebirth for Georges Danjo. I'm kind of siding with Yorgan de Castro. I'm going to say under 1.5, but that is not one that I am going anywhere near with my hard-earned money because there's just no way of knowing how that fight is going to go. Next up, we've got a lightweight fight. John Makdessi taking on Ignacio Bahamondes, yet another Dana White Contender Series, a guy coming into the UFC for his first fight, taking on a very experienced veteran in John Makdessi. Total here set at 2.5. The over is -170. The under is +135. I see this one going over. John Makdessi is not a finisher. He's not a guy that goes after his opponents and hurts them, and he's going to be at a distinct reach advantage here in this fight, taking on a younger, longer, tougher type of fighter. Well, maybe not tougher, but you know what I mean. Ignacio Bahamondes, really flashy striker, good kicks, likes to play the range game, and I think he's going to just outstrike John Makdessi here because that's Makdessi's game. He's a kickboxer. He likes to stay on the outside, trade leg kicks. Ignacio can play that game all day, and if neither of these guys gets into range where they can really do anything to each other, we see a very boring 15-minute decision, and that's kind of the way I see this one playing out. Now, John Makdessi has been knocked out twice. Both of those knockouts have come from flashy strikers with head kicks. So there's always the opportunity for Ignacio to land something crazy, slip one over the arm, catch him on the side of the head, put the elder statesman out on his shield here. But I don't know if we see that. That's a lot to ask of a kid making his UFC debut against this caliber of an opponent. So I'm going to say over. I don't necessarily like the price tag at -175. That's a lot of chalk to be laying. But if John Makdessi wins, you guarantee he's not finishing the fight. If Ignacio Bahamondes wins, maybe he gets the knockout, but it's more than likely by decision. So I think the over 2.5 makes some sense. Women's bantamweight fight, Norma Dumont taking on Erin Blanchfield. Let me find my totals here because they hid this one from me. Apologize for the delay here in the show. I hate it when they do this. They move the fights all out of order and stuff, and I got to try and track them down. Total set at 2.5. Over 2.5 is -300. Under 2.5 is +220. We talk about it on the show every single week. We get value on the unders with the women. Not here. This is a spot where both women are relatively solidly matched up. They both got decent ground games. They both got decent striking games. Light on their feet. Nice in and out movement. But neither of them, I don't know that they're proven finishers at this stage. And there's a lot of questions about both of them. Blanchfield making her UFC debut. Coming up a weight class against a very big Norma Dumont. So tall order here for her. But she's really tough. I don't know that she gets finished even if she loses. I'm going to say that the over is the move here, but again, I'm just not eating that kind of chalk. I hate doing that, and it might be a lock here because these women are smaller and there's not a lot of KO power, but the submission in women's fights, they come out of random spots when you least expect it, so that could always pop up here and absolutely screw us, so I'm not touching it. That's not a fight I plan on betting. Lightweight fight, Scott Hot Sauce Holtzman taking on Mateusz Gamrot. This is another one that could be an absolute banger for us. So Scott Holtzman, really, really tough and durable, but he's coming off of the first knockout loss of his career. He got caught with a big spinning back fist that put him down, and I'm curious to see how he rebounds. He's 37 years old, so that chin doesn't get any better. It just gets worse. And he's taking on Mateusz Gamrot, a guy that's got some big power on the feet, but does a lot of grappling. Hot Sauce gets taken down, but he's got a really good get-up game. He's really physically strong. We're in the small cage. I think Gamrot's going to be able to use that to his advantage. Total here set at 2.5. The over is -240. The under is +185. Yikes. I mean, this is a spot where I think Mateusz Gamrot can absolutely land a bomb, and with Scott Holtzman making a quick turnaround after a bad knockout loss, the argument is there for the knockout, but at the same time, more often than not, Gamrot goes to decision. More often than not, Scott Holtzman is durable. I'm going to say we kind of see a return to form. Let's go over, but again, it's one that I've got serious questions because of an aging fighter with a potential chin problem and a young fighter that's hungry to get his first UFC win after a split decision didn't go his way his last time out. He may be coming looking for blood, so there might be an undercashing here, but we only have one fighter who's contributing to that under, and that's Gamrot, because Scott Holtzman is never finishing Mateusz Gamrot. And I always talk about this. When I play an under, I want not one but two fighters to assist in that cashing. We need an angle from either guy to help us, and Scott Holtzman, he's too durable. That helps the over, that doesn't help the under for us, so I'm definitely not playing that under 2.5, even though I have a weird sneaky feeling about Gamrot landing a big right hand. Lightweight fight, Jim Miller taking on Joe Salecki. This is interesting because Jim is looking into a mirror of himself, just a little bit better 2.0 version of Jim Miller is Joe Salecki. Total here set at 2.5. Over 2.5 is minus 140. Under 2.5 is plus 125. Another spot where I think violence is the answer, folks. Jim Miller is a round one monster. If he catches anybody, it's going to be in that first round when he's fresh, and he can submit absolutely anybody in that first round. That's what this guy does. Joe Salecki on the flip side of this thing, incredible BJJ black belt, high-level kid, got some nasty, sneaky submissions himself, great gas tank, good solid striking. So I think this is a spot where he minds his P's and Q's, he doesn't get caught by Jim Miller, he drags this thing late, and then the finish is open for Joe Salecki once Jim Miller slows down, because Jim is known to gas, and especially with both these guys being grapplers first, there could be a lot of wrestling, and that's the thing that really tires him out. So I could see an early finish for Jim, a late finish for Joe. Obviously, this thing could go to decision, but with both these guys being capable of finishing, I think this under 2.5 is a spot where we can comfortably bet the violence. Plus 120, plus 125 on the under 2.5. I wouldn't hate that shot at all. You don't have to care who wins. Just hope somebody gets choked. Main event time. Mike Platinum Perry taking on Daniel Rodriguez. Maybe, there's a lot of good fights. I was going to say maybe my favorite fight of the night, but we'll see. There's a lot of good stuff on this card. Total here set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is minus 135. The under 2.5 is plus 115. Mike Platinum Perry came into the UFC and was just a knockout guy. Highly entertaining, brash, loved to talk, big power. He's exactly the kind of guy the UFC is looking for. And then he just kind of flopped. He took that big step up in competition, started having more decisions, started mixing in his wrestling more, running into people that are more defensively sound that he couldn't just flatline with one shot. And we've seen him kind of become a little bit more of a decision guy. Daniel Rodriguez, he's only got 2 losses on his UFC record. They are both by decision. But. He's been hurt in every single one of his UFC fights, and he's fought a relatively low level of UFC caliber competition. Mike Perry, his durability is held up, but he was just finished by Jeff Neal. Now, Neal is one of the biggest knockout artists in the division, maybe the biggest knockout artist in the division. So it's no knock against Mike Perry that he got knocked out by that guy, coming off of a 15-minute war with none other than Vicente Luque. So we can maybe give him a little bit of a pass there, but the fact remains that there's an opportunity for Mike Perry to get knocked out because of all the damage that he's taken, and Daniel Rodriguez is this close to getting knocked out in several of his UFC fights already. There's a potential for violence here, and I think that's why the line is set where it's at. Honestly, this is not a spot where I see a ton of value in either line because it's about accurate. I feel like more often than not, this thing probably goes to decision, but both guys absolutely have the ability to finish the other. I mean, Daniel Rodriguez is a slick jiu-jitsu practitioner. We have seen Mike Perry get submitted before, so there's an opportunity for a finish on the ground, and then both guys are fully capable of landing a bomb or getting caught themselves and getting knocked out. This is a good fight to talk violence, but at the same time, Mike Perry's just been so tough, so gritty, so durable. Daniel Rodriguez has dug deep every single time, never quite let himself get finished. Either that or he did the finishing himself. But I could see this as a fight where it ramps up. Mike Perry's talked about changing things around. He's got a kid now. He's looking to provide. He's got to get serious. I could absolutely see this be a type of spot where Mike Perry hurts Rodriguez, and that kind of puts Rodriguez into berserker mode, and then he hurts Perry back, and then and then it just kind of melts down into this slugfest until somebody falls. I could absolutely see that happening. So if I had to make a bet here, thank goodness we don't have to bet every single fight, but if I did have to make a bet here, I'd be going under 2.5 at the slight plus money, expecting somebody to get caught eventually. Women's strawweight fight, Nina Ansarov taking on Mackenzie Dern. Here we've got a spot where we've got a 2.5, over 2.5 minus 180, under 2.5 is plus 143, and really this is a spot where your line matches your fighter more often than not. So if you're on Mackenzie Dern, you think she probably lands a submission, because how often does Mackenzie Dern really win a decision? It doesn't happen that often. She's got to be the better grappler, and she's got to be able to control the other fighter, and that really doesn't happen a lot. She's got next to no wrestling. Nina Ansarov, if you're with her, she's a decision machine. She's a counter wrestler, she's a slick striker, and she isn't the biggest finisher we've ever seen in the division, even though she is the other side of Mrs. Nunez. So this is a spot where I think if it's going over 2.5, that's Nina. If it's going under 2.5, that's probably Dern, unless Dern completely gasses out and Nina hits her with the kitchen sink in like the late second or third round. But more often than not, I think this one's hitting the judges' scorecards. And over 2.5, minus 180 for a women's fight like this, it's not a bad price tag. I'm not betting this one because, again, there's a lot of questions with Nina coming back, and all Dern needs is one opportunity on the floor to snatch something up and get a quick tap-tap. So I'm not going to touch that one, but I would think it's going to the judges' scorecards. Middleweight fight, Sam Alvey taking on Julian Marquez, the Cuban Missile Crisis versus my guy, Smiling Sam. Total set at 2.5. The over 2.5 is plus 100, even money. The under 2.5 is minus 130. This is a spot that I was looking at a little earlier in the week. Very, very tempted to actually bet the under here, and I decided I'm going to go ahead and stay off because, once again, I think the line is just right. So both these guys are durable. Sam Alvey has been knocked out a couple of times, but he's dropping from 205 to 185. That does two things. It helps and hurts the under both ways, because with him dropping weight, maybe he gets knocked out a little easier because he's got a bad weight cut, he's got less water in his head. It doesn't help his durability to be dropping those extra 15 pounds. On the flip side of that, he's going to be the bigger, stronger man. You would expect him to hit harder down at 185 because he knocks out 205ers moving down a class. We would expect that power to translate. So he may have the ability to knock out Julian Marquez. That helps the under. So it both helps and hurts. I'm not quite sure what to make of it, and because I'm a little confused about it, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it alone. Julian Marquez is a guy that's been tough. He's durable, but they call him the Cuban Missile Crisis because of how freaking hard he hits. So there's an opportunity for Julian Marquez to get the finish here in this fight, and he's got a nasty submission game. So if he manages to rock Sam Alvey, he can always choke him out when it hits the floor. This thing has violence written all over it, but Sam Alvey is so low volume that I don't know if it's going to happen, because he's going to backpedal, he's going to look for his one big shot, and if he can't quite connect and hurt this guy, it's probably going to be a slow-paced striking affair that squeezes its way to the judges' scorecards with one or two big moments. We've seen Sam Alvey get hit with one or two big shots before, but he recovers, he gets back up, he manages to keep on pushing and fighting. So I think this one's maybe going to hit the judges' scorecards, even though it's got violence written all over it. If I had to make a bet, I'd go over 2.5 at plus 100. Definitely not betting it, though. We got a featherweight fight here for your co-main event. Arnold Allen taking on Sadiq Youssef. And this is definitely the fight that I'm most excited for. I'm a huge fan of Sadiq Youssef. I love what this guy brings to the table. Arnold Allen is a kid that I can't wait to see what he has at the higher level. Big step up, big prospect versus prospect battle. It's going to be fun. Total here set at 2.5. Over 2.5 is minus 200. Under 2.5 is plus 158. And I would be extremely tempted to bet the violence here. This is another one that I'm kind of staring at and wondering what's holding me back. Plus 158 on the under 2.5 seems realistic. Sadiq Youssef is a nasty striker. He hits hard. He's physically strong. He just crushes people. Arnold Allen on the flip side of this thing, his striking is coming along. He's got some solid striking himself, and his ground game is just nasty. So when these guys clash, it's going to see who can really implement their game plan, or who can find that slight little edge over their opponent where they're just that much better than the other guy, and then exploit that. So Arnold Allen might be able to get Sadiq Youssef to the ground. We've seen Sadiq give up takedowns before, and if that happens, does he submit him? Maybe he does. Does he ground and pound him? Possibly. We've seen Sadiq Youssef rocked. Could he get clipped with a knee coming in up the middle? Absolutely he could. But Arnold Allen on the flip side of this thing, can he handle the pressure and the power shots of a Sadiq Youssef? I mean, Sadiq just melts people with his power. He makes them panic wrestle because he's hitting them so freaking hard. I could see either guy finishing this fight. I absolutely could. But at the same time, it's 16-1 versus an 11-1. These guys don't lose. Not only do they not lose, they don't really get finished. So I am not really looking to bet this fight because it's going to be so much fun to watch and it's so entertaining. It doesn't need the extra juice or action, and I don't see a perfect angle. Even though the under 2.5 at plus 185, plus 158, that's the way that I would be looking to bet this fight. it's not like it's a home run. It's not a smash spot. So, unfortunately, I'm going to pass on the co-main event of this one. But just make sure you grab your fireball and popcorn, folks, because this is going to be one hell of a fight. Main event time. We've got Marvin Vittori taking on Kevin Holland. Trailblazer, big mouth, whatever you want to call this, man. Total here set at 4.5. The over 4.5 is plus 130. The under 4.5 is minus 160. I'm so torn on this one. You know, we just saw Kevin Holland. We just saw him get out-grappled for 25 minutes. And can Marvin Vittori do that to him? Maybe. Probably. But Marvin Vittori doesn't tend to shoot for that many takedowns. He likes to strike. He likes to play on the feet. He's tough. He's durable. We haven't seen this guy really in trouble on the feet in a long, long time. And he's just so hard to knock out. Kevin Holland, incredible striker, hits hard, he's fast, but he's going to be the smaller guy. He's had no training camp for this one. He's basically throwing the playbook out the window and coming in with a chip on his shoulder. But you can't finish this guy. We've seen him get submitted once or twice, not a lot. He always gets decision losses because he's got a chin. He's got an absolute brick for a head. So I don't see Marvin Vittori knocking out Kevin Holland. I could see Kevin Holland somehow cracking the chin of Marvin Vittori because he's that guy. He hits that hard. He swings those big, long arms from unexpected angles. You never know where it's going to come from. I can see Marvin Vittori grinding out Kevin Holland the same way we saw Brunson did, but I think Holland is going to have a sense of urgency in this fight. I think because of the last fight, he's going to be going for it harder, and what that means is I think that creates more chaos early in the fight. If he's going harder, he's either going to get a big knockout early and hurt Vittori early, or he's going to maybe gas himself out, leave himself vulnerable late when he would have the gas to defend himself, when he would have the ability to get away from something or stop a submission attempt. All of a sudden, it's on the table again. So, gun to my head, I would have to take the under 4.5 on this one at minus 160. I think the violence is the play because whether or not Kevin Holland wins this fight, I mean, if he's winning this fight, it's not happening by decision. And if he loses this fight, maybe it's happening by decision, but we've seen Marvin Vittori break these people and then just submit them methodically a little bit later in the fight once they've slowed down. And if Kevin Holland comes out hard, that's kind of the way I see this playing out. So in the main event, I'm taking a look at the under 4.5. We're not getting any kind of a break on that price tag at minus 160, but that's about the only way I could look. That's your show for today, folks. Make sure you subscribe here to Pub Sports Live. And then, of course, when Pub Sports Radio is back up, make sure you head on over there and subscribe to that one, too. Please give me a like, share the show out. You have no idea how much that helps. And, hey, that's the first ever episode of the Total Takedown. Thank you very much. You have a great day. Good luck on all your action, and let's roll.